It's spooky season, especially when it comes to keeping your kids safe. We are tackling two topics today. First, Cybersecurity Awareness Month. How do kids make themselves easy targets and what you can do about it?
Criminal taking advantage of the emotional state of an adolescent. They pretend to be a love interest online. Maybe they meet on a social media app, or it ends up as it looks like a random text.
And it's a scary time of year if your kid has a food allergy. We talked to a dietitian about how to trick or treat safely and the best options to put in your candy bowl for all kids.
It's hard to know what allergies kids have, right? Like some kids are just allergic to milk, some are allergic to gluten, some are allergic to 6, 7 allergens. So just to have some options for them. But your safest bet truly when it comes to allergies, I hate to say it, it's gonna be non-chocolate things.
That's today on Mom Squad. Everyone, thanks for tuning into Mom Squad. I'm Maureen Kyle. Today, we are talking about some scary topics. First, keeping our kids safe while they're online. Just like adults, they're vulnerable to phishing scams, online predators, and revealing too much information. But there are ways to keep them safe. We talk to an expert in a minute, but first, let's take a look at how kids are becoming targets. A recent study on the state of internet scams found that people under the age of 20, that is the highest percentage age group falling victim. Teens and children showed the largest increase, 2,500% between 2017 and 2022. The most likely place kids are getting targeted, social media, followed by online gaming, imposter scams, and other apps. This isn't just a financial issue, it's a mental health and safety issue too. Kids who fall victim to these scams are embarrassed, so they are more likely to become depressed or harm themselves. There are many cases where the parents are unaware this is even happening. We want to make sure that your child is safe. So I got a chance to talk to Lisa Plagmeyer, Executive Director of the National Cybersecurity Alliance. Lisa, thank you so much for talking to us about this today, because I know I'm a parent, I know a lot of parents out there are thinking, am I doing all the right moves to secure all of our information, keep everybody safe? So if you can, talk to us about Cybersecurity Awareness Month and how this fits in for families.
Yeah, Cybersecurity Awareness Month is not just for businesses. Most of us hear about it at work. Maybe our employer runs some sort of activities or has a guest speaker, somebody like me, come in and talk to you about cybersecurity during Cybersecurity Awareness Month. But on StaySafeOnline.org, we have information for families and children, aging adults, every demographic. So it's really important. If you think about it, large companies, the bank you do business with, for example, probably has a couple hundred people on the cybersecurity team defending that organization, and then well-trained employees on top of that. But when it comes to you at home and your children, a lot of it is up to you. When it comes to social media platforms and things like that, the security is often something that you have to configure, so you have to take an action to protect yourselves.
And we've talked about it a little bit on this show, but are you starting to see scams targeting, and really, I mean, this is for the sandwich generation, the kids and teens, and also our aging parents?
Yes, yes, and yes. Oh my goodness, yes. It's getting worse. It's getting a lot worse, unfortunately. So what we've seen hit sort of that in between tween adolescent age lately over the past couple of years is sextortion. And that is still on the rise. So if you think about a criminal taking advantage of the emotional state of an adolescent, they pretend to be a love interest online. Maybe they meet on a social media app, or it ends up as it looks like a random text. And adults get these too, the random text. I got one last week. I left my shoes in your car. It's an attempt at and you just ignore it, just delete it. It's an attempt at a friendship scam or potentially a romance scam, or that can be an attempt, if it's a teen or an adult, at a sextortion scam. So what they're doing is manipulating our emotions as humans. If we're in a vulnerable state, if we're, adolescents and all of our brain chemistry isn't quite mature, it might be easier to lure us into a false relationship to the point where maybe we send a photo of something that we shouldn't. And then very quickly after that, it escalates into, I'm going to tell your parents, I'm going to send this photo to your school unless you send me money. So those are happening a lot. They're happening to adults of all ages, but particularly teens, and there have been a number of suicides. Unfortunately, teenagers who have taken their own lives because they've been so stressed out. Because if you look at some of the cases of these, the actual texts, the folks that are doing the criminals doing the extortion are incredibly scary and cruel, and so it can escalate very quickly. The ones that are friendship scams or potential romance scams, some of those look very personal. So those are more likely to hit adults. My neighbor got one a week or so ago that included so much personal information about her that she had this immediate fear, like the bad guy was sitting in a car out in front of her house. The reality is there's so much information online about us, information we put out there on social media, and then if you couple that with information about us that's available on the dark web, a bad guy can sound like they're literally right outside your house. You have this feeling of immediacy, and that they know so much about me, they must be somebody who really knows me and has targeted me. And those can turn into extortion scams, friendship scams, crypto scams, and escalate to this thing known as pig butchering, which is a rude term that's translated from Chinese because most of it's being done by Chinese organizations.
So as adults, I mean, if we're even falling for this, how do you talk to kids who don't have the life experience that we have? What are those things that you tell your children to really look out for, or warning signs, or what to do if they, if they get that weird text or something over social media?
Yeah, and gaming apps as well. We've seen human trafficking, child trafficking that starts on a gaming app as early as middle school. So the criminals are playing a long game, right? They're going to build up a friendship over months or years before they entice you to meet them in person, for example, or to send money for some reason. So that's stranger danger that we've taught kids from a really long time. That's really important. That is just as important online as it is in person. Because you really can't verify that somebody is who they say they are. The cyber criminals are making really elaborate backstories, creating synthetic identities, social media profiles with lots of photos and everything. So you think this is a real person. So it's really hard to independently verify that the person is who they say they are. So stranger danger is really important. Parents, make your friends list private on Facebook. If you're going to take pictures of your kids and share them on social media, then make sure that only your friends can see those. That's really important. Lock down your social media profiles as much as you can. Too many folks doing very sweet things like taking the picture at Halloween or taking the picture on the first day of school with the kids at the front door, holding the little chalkboard with the name of the teacher and the name of the school. That's a lot of personal information. And maybe they're standing in front of your house number. That's a lot of personal information about your children just in that photo. So you really don't need anybody else to be able to see that, except the people that you already know. We do that because we want to share with friends and family, but we're inadvertently sharing with a lot more people.
I want to, before you move on to the next point, I do want to talk more about that, because I always get questions, and I know I have questions of what can they do with those photos, because so many people, they share the first day of school, or maybe they share the holiday photo. So what is it that they can take from there, and how can they use it against us parents? Is it the face? Is it the information? Like, how are they using it?
Well, so these days with deepfakes, they could take a photo or a video or an audio of your child or anybody and make a deepfake version of that and give them, have them saying something different. It can be like a Zoom call. It can be a deepfake video where you're kind of talking to, there's a puppeteer back there on the other side of the AI tool that is deciding what the words are that I'm going to say, but it's going to look like and sound like me, and it's going to be so well done that you're not going to be able to tell the difference. So if you think about trying to, the classic one is the phone call, hi, Mom, it's me. I'm in big trouble. I need money for bail, or I've had a medical emergency, or I've been in an accident or something. Those are just getting harder and harder to detect because the voice is going to sound just like your child's voice. And the problem is when we post those pictures, it's not just the videos. It's not just their voice and their image. It's the amount of personal information that's included in there. So if I know what year your child was in Miss So-and-so's class at school, for example, and what they wore the first day of school this year, or all these little personal details. If I'm going to call you up or text you with a scam, and that maybe involves your child, maybe I'm saying your child was in an accident or something, I'm able to weave a tale that you are more likely to believe because I'm including all this information that it feels like you must know me, you must be somebody I can trust because you know all these things. Like, how did you get all this information? We just kind of forget how much we've put out there in the public. So it's deep fakes, and then it's just using that information to make to tell us a more believable tale that makes us more vulnerable to a scam.
Do we trust those privacy settings that Instagram, Facebook, I mean, when we make our friends list private and everything, is that enough of a protection?
I wouldn't tell you to skip it. I mean, you absolutely need to do it. There have been cases in the past where there have been problems with some of the settings, and those have been settled. The problem is the settings can be hard to find. So on StaySafeOnline.org, we have a page with direct links to privacy and security settings of all the popular apps. Because guess what? It's not necessarily in some of the social media companies' best interest for you to keep your life more private. So those can be difficult to find. You have to kind of dig down and find them. The other thing I tell people is make sure you've enabled MFA, multi-factor authentication, on your social media accounts and your email. So not just your banks that are usually forcing you to do it, where, you know, that thing where you have to get your phone and acknowledge either code that's been texted or emailed to you, or a push notification to an authenticator app, something like that. That's really, really important because we have bad password habits. We tend to use the same password over and over again. We tend to use passwords that are too short and too easy to crack. The government advice is now 16 characters or longer, which is really long. You probably need a password manager to do that. I'm a huge fan of family password manager accounts. Those make it all so much easier. It's hard for kids to not want to use the same password everywhere. It's hard for kids, younger children, to not think of their password as kind of their secret, but what do they do with their best friend? You tell your best friend your secrets. Yeah. It's hard for children to do that. So family password manager accounts are really, really easy to use. But if somebody does have your password, or you're using one that's too easy to crack, if you've got multi-factor authentication turned on, then somebody can't access your account without that second factor. The thing about social media is, for example, you don't have to prove that you're you to Facebook when you open a Facebook account. So if you lose control of them, if your Facebook account gets hacked, Facebook has no way of verifying that that was really you to begin with. A lot of us don't even use our full legal name on our Facebook account. So meanwhile, a bad guy has control of your Facebook account and is using that to potentially scam other people. So there are a crazy number of fake social media profiles out there and social media accounts that have been taken over by cyber criminals. So really good reason to use a long, complex password and then have multi-factor authentication turned on all your social media accounts. Your email is really important. People think, well, what do I have of value to a bad guy in my email account? Well, your email is usually tied to multi-factor authentication and password reset processes for other accounts. So you want to secure that as much as you would your bank account.
What is also the danger, too, of, I know so many people who have had their social media accounts hacked and it gets taken over. What's that danger? And then I guess I have a follow-up question, too. Then I know people who it's taken them months to get their social media account back. Like, what's that process? So how are we vulnerable? How does that happen? And then how do we get it back?
It happens most frequently because we're using passwords that we've used someplace else, and that password has been involved in a breach, or it's just too short. Anything longer than 15 or 16 characters, and it's not somebody guessing your password. We have this vision in our heads of the hacker in the hoodie trying to guess our passwords. You're up against a software cracking tool. So 5 or 6, 7, 8 characters is not going to cut it. It's incredibly easy for a bad guy with a piece of software to crack a short password. Or we don't have MFA enabled on the account, and then they're able to, or in addition, we don't have MFA enabled, then they're able to get in. So what they're going to do is take that account and use that to try and defraud other people. We've all gotten the direct message. I've gotten, the direct message from my Aunt Betty on Facebook, but it didn't sound quite right. And that's because Aunt Betty lost control of her Facebook account. And now there's a cyber criminal direct messaging me, trying to get me to engage and see if they can lure me into some, some sort of friendship or crypto or romance scam, any kind of scam like that. So that's what they're being used for. The problem is, as I said, you didn't have to send, Facebook a copy of your passport or your driver's license just to open that account. So how are they going to know if you contact them and say, hey, a cyber criminal took over my Facebook account. Can I get my account back, please? How are you going to prove that you're you? Mm-hmm. So it's a conundrum for Facebook. I wish they would just enable MFA by default. If MFA was turned on for Facebook users and we had to go disable it if we didn't want to use it, we'd be more likely to be using it, and there would be fewer account takeovers. It's called account takeover. Lose your account. And you have to remember, you've got cyber criminals out there that are working on really elaborate backstories. So if somebody's using a synthetic identity that involves your name and maybe somebody else's and your photos, but somebody else's personal details like social security number, driver's license, or whatever, they can create kind of a fake person and then, create a life for that person. And so then when they start to reach out to people to try and defraud them in some way, it seems really legit because here's all these pictures of this person and their family, and they're on LinkedIn, and they're here and they're there, and it all seems like a nice watertight story, and you're tempted to believe that this person really exists. Yeah. And that's really their account, when that's not the case. They're trying to gain trust. Yeah.
For family devices, I'm thinking, some people have a family cell phone or a kid's, like I mentioned earlier, kids come home, they have the school laptop, and I know I'm in the kitchen cooking dinner and they're doing homework, and sometimes I'm not looking at the screen. Are there any loopholes that we need to tighten up when it comes to those type of devices at home?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to school devices, from what we see, the schools all over the country are all over race when it comes to their maturity with security and privacy in these tools. There are, for example, in the state of New York, the schools have to have a chief privacy officer. They have strict privacy laws. And for example, they make sure that the staff are all trained. They send simulated phishing emails to teachers and staff to make sure that they know how to recognize something that's malicious. Not every state does that. It's kind of all over the place. And so I think as parents, it's really important until your state has passed some privacy and security legislation or some regulations that apply to the schools, using complex, unique passwords on every single app that your child is using. I've heard of stories where the teacher writes the password down on the blackboard or on the whiteboard, and everybody in the class is using the same password. Not a good idea. So make sure your children are using different passwords for every different account, that they've enabled multi-factor authentication if they're able to. If not, you might want to ask the teacher or the IT administrator about that. Are they able to use a password manager on the device? Sometimes the easiest way to use one of those, you install the app and then also install it on the browser. And that makes them super, super simple to use. So make sure you're able to do that. If that's being blocked, I would talk to the IT administrator at the school. And then just looking out for anything malicious. The problem, I think, with kids today is that they've had technology in their hands for a very, very young age, and they're really fast with it. If you watch them on an app or a website, they're really speedy, but they're probably too speedy and maybe missing some of the red flags that can tell us if something is malicious, like a link that doesn't look quite right that might be taking us to a malicious website. We'll get a malware infection, or a phishing email that could be doing the same thing. Getting children to slow down just a little bit and train them on what to look for. If it doesn't look right, don't click. Don't open the attachment. Don't click on the...
Coming up after the break, Halloween is also a very scary season if your child has a food allergy. But there are ways to make sure their health isn't at risk and to become a safe haven for kids with food allergies. A pediatric dietitian explains. Welcome back. Maybe you've heard of the Teal Pumpkin Project. This has been around for several years, but it's an effort to make sure that kids with food allergies have a safe Halloween. You put a teal pumpkin on your doorstep to indicate that you have treats that are safe and allergen-free. But what are those treats? Pediatric dietitian Jennifer Hyland showed us some of the options. I don't know about anybody else, but I know whenever it's trick or treat time, I always am worried about food allergies with kids.
Yeah.
But you're here to show us a few safe options.
Yes, we want to talk about options. It can be really stressful as a parent with food allergies because you just don't know what they're going to get, right? And really, there's not a ton of candy out there that is safe from all the top 9 food allergens.
Right. So what do you recommend that we put in our trick or treat buckets for kids coming door to door?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing I want to touch on, I don't know if you're familiar, but it's the Teal Pumpkin Project. So if you see someone with a teal pumpkin outside at their house, it means that they have some allergy-friendly options, which is amazing for kids. I think it's awesome that it's becoming a thing now. But I would honestly suggest having a bin of regular candy, if that's what you want to give out also, of course, and then a bin of some allergy-free candy, or we can also talk about some non-allergen stuff. And the reason I say that is because it's hard to know what allergies kids have, right? Like some kids are just allergic to milk, some are allergic to gluten, some are allergic to 6, 7 allergens. So just to have some options for them. But your safest bet truly when it comes to allergies, I hate to say it, it's gonna be non-chocolate things. So,
oh, okay.
Yes.
So do you have some examples in here? Because I do. And is it okay if they're in the same bin?
Thank
Okay.
you. That's a good question.
Okay.
It is okay if they're in the same bin. I mean more so if like a kid is coming and they're like, oh my gosh, you have a teal pumpkin, this is so exciting, then you can be like, this is your bin, right?
Yes.
But things like, so gummy bears, and we'll talk a little bit about toddlers in a minute because I wouldn't give these to little kids, but things like gummy bears, things like Skittles, things like Smarties, Suckers.
Okay.
Most of those are going to be Twizzlers. Yes.
Okay.
Most of these are going to be free of most of the allergens. Your chocolate where you run into issues a lot of times is milk. So like a Reese's here, which it might be free of some of the other allergens, but peanuts and milk, of course, in this one here, and same with the Kit Kat because it has that milk in there. So now there are a lot of chocolate brands that have dairy-free, gluten-free options, but they're specialty stores and you would have to buy them special.
Got it. Okay. So that's where we are with candy. What would you recommend for some other options too?
So I love non-food options or non-candy options because it's totally safe and it's fun and it's different. They're getting so much candy, right? So like, let's switch it up a little bit. So these fun applesauce pouches right here, these are my favorite, right? They're quick, they're simple, they're just unsweetened applesauce, so there's nothing in them. They're totally allergy safe. And then getting into, again, the non-candy items. So these slap bracelets, so fun. I don't know if you remember these, but
gosh.
These are a hit.
Out of practice with them.
Yes. So these are a hit with the kids, and then also temporary tattoos. I find that they love.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, even bonus if you have a little wet rag and you can like stick it on them there. I know it gets a little dark, but you know we do our best. These ones actually are glow in the dark, so they have some glow in the dark options. You can just get off of Amazon as well. But I think doing some non-food options, it's just going to make sure that they feel safe. It's also good for your little kids, for your toddlers, because we also want to make sure with the toddlers we're not giving them things that are choking risk. There's actually a lot of that around the Halloween season too, so it's kind of safe for everyone.
Let's talk about toddlers because I have a ton of toddlers that come to my house, and they're so cute. They're the cutest in their little costumes.
Yes.
And then I always let them pick from the regular candy, and I know I've personally always let them pick.
Yes, and I think as a candy giver outer, that is still totally fine, right? But as a parent of a toddler myself, I'm checking my toddler's candy when they get home, and I'm like, what is safe? So we really want to avoid things that are hard and round and things that are really chewy and gummy. So that means actually things like...
Let me get the gummy bears again.
Yes.
So you held these up and said, let's talk about these later. So these are not
allergy safe, not super great for toddlers because they're super chewy. They can stick in their teeth, and they can also get stuck if they don't chew them whole, or they can get stuck in their throat. So and when it comes to suckers, I love to do suckers that are flat versus round. Because a round sucker, if they bite off of it, it goes down their throat. Now again, the older they get, the safer they are, right? Like if a kid knows how to safely eat a sucker, we're okay. But flat ones are gonna be safer. And then doing things that, like actually Reese's are great for toddlers. So again, not so much allergens, but for the toddlers, it's a super safe option.
Is it because it's so soft?
It's soft, yeah.
So then talk to me about the medium ones, like the Snickers or something. Like
so same thing. I would say your 3-4-year-olds who are proficient in chewing and they're doing great, Snickers are fine with those little nuts in there. But whole nuts we really don't want for kids until they're 4 or older. So Snickers are okay. Twix are gonna be okay. The caramel again is like a little, but for your 3-4-year-olds, okay. I wouldn't give it to a 1 or a 2-year-old though. Kit Kats are gonna be pretty safe too. So again, we wanna focus more on like things that they can chew. It doesn't have hard round things. It doesn't have nuts. It doesn't have, like I would watch out for for like Laffy Taffy and things like that. I don't want stuff like that for the little toddlers. So, and it's hard, right? They're like, I want to eat this, I want to eat this. So I would just say if I, as a parent myself, I kind of look through the candy. I try to just put like, hey, let's have some of this tonight, things that are safe. And then when they're in bed, just kind of pull some of that aside. And you can have a conversation with them too. It's really good to teach your kids, like, this isn't unhealthy. It's not that you can't eat this. We just want to eat things that are safe for kids. And as you get bigger, these are things we'll try.
A question that we ask every year, and I'm going to ask you too while we have you here, because in case somebody hasn't seen Mom Squad before. Every year, you have the big candy dump at the end of the evening. Kids want to eat a ton of candy. Then we have that sugar high. What do you recommend, especially since this is the beginning of sweet season and overeating season? How do you recommend portion-wise what kids can eat?
Absolutely. So this might feel crazy coming from a dietitian, but the night of Halloween, I kind of let them go for it.
Yeah.
I do. Because I think that when we are putting set limits on things and we're restricting them, we really do see from research and from practical application that they want it more. So I really suggest just the night of Halloween, kind of letting them have a couple things, but give them a good dinner. Give them a dinner with protein ahead of time. Keep them hydrated so that they're full. It's not like they are just eating candy because they didn't eat dinner, right? And then from there on out, put a little piece in their lunchbox throughout the week. Throw a piece on the dinner plate, things like that, so that they see that it's there, and it's not like, if I don't eat it all today, I'm never going to get it again.
Right.
That's what we kind of want to avoid. So, kind of small doses where, they can have it, and it's okay to say no, right? If your kids want 25 pieces of candy, it's okay to say like, hey, we're done for tonight. We're gonna have more tomorrow. But I think that's always good. Letting them know that like, it's not all or nothing now, and then they don't have as much of an attachment to it.
I usually do the go ahead, pick one for the lunchbox.
Yeah, that's perfect. I love that.
And then of course after dinner, it's, can I have another? So
it's so hard. And some days you're gonna say yes, and some days you're gonna say no. And that's what I tell parents. Like, it's okay to say yes, it's okay to say no, just like you would for anything else. So we're not restricting if we say no, but also we don't want to say no all the time, and then they feel like candy's just like this like glamorized thing. You know what I mean? So, but you're right. We're getting into the season, and it's rough out there.
I know. Well, and I sneak the candy too. It's
absolutely. I know. We could have a separate talk for adults, right? I can't help you with that.
I can't. I know. I'm waiting for those days.
Yes.
These are all such great ideas. Thank you so much.
Yes,
I love it.
It's great. Yeah. Happy Halloween.
Yeah. Happy Halloween. Thank you.
Thanks.
A big thank you again to dietitian Jennifer Hyland. We're hoping that you and your family have a safe and happy Halloween season. We want you to join our squad. You can join the Mom Squad with Maureen Kyle Facebook page, or follow us on Instagram at Mom Squad Show. This is where we get to share stories, get your feedback, and connect. Thanks again for tuning in. We'll see you right back here next time.